We first thing I'd like to do is ask Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson, are you able to see our agenda on the screen right now?
Yes, Mr. Rimpa, I can see the agenda.
All right, thank you. First thing we're going to do, guys, is just talk to you a little bit about, first of all, congratulations on getting involved in the Fort LaBeouf Cyber Academy. We're really excited about this opportunity for you as a student. We think that this is going to provide you with an outstanding Fort LaBeouf education, something that, we weren't completely sure of. We're going to talk a little bit later about the difference between what went on during the fourth 9 weeks last year and what's going to go on now. And there's going to be some major differences between the two. So we're going to talk about that. Before we get started, we ask you to please mute your microphone. Before I moved over to this screen, I can't see it anymore. In fact, all I see on my screen, just so you guys know, is simply the agenda in front of us. So I can't see how many people are there, but it was over 30. So it looks like we got a great turnout. And so that we're not talking over top of each other, first thing I'm going to ask you to do is please just mute your microphone if you don't mind. Please mute that, and then we're going to have some time to do some questions later. Please wait to submit questions until you're prompted, only because we're going to cover a lot of topics. There's a lot of things that we're going over, and there's a very good chance that we're able to answer your questions. There's a very good chance that we're able to work with you. And answer those questions for you. So questions are going to be submitted through the chat feature once we finish up. So, as we get towards the end, I'm going to prompt you and ask you to put your questions in the chat feature. I'm sure, even though we've put a lot of time into this, I'm sure there'll be some things that we forgot or maybe didn't clarify quite as clearly as we thought we were or hoped we were. So again, you'll be able to ask those questions. So we'll have an open forum with some question and answer at the end, and give everybody a chance to speak up if there's something we missed. First thing that's really, really important, keeping the main objective our objective. When I take a look at this and I think about what's going on with our community, with our society, our main objective is always making sure that our students are healthy, making sure that we provide a safe and secure environment for you, and then also teaching students. That's our number one priority. The only thing that really comes in front of that is safety and security. That's why at Fort LaBeouf, we have Mr. Pizzo. He'll be on in a few minutes to talk to you guys. Mr. Pizzo's main job every day when he comes to work, that's where his focus is: safety and security of the building, providing the best atmosphere possible. And the same thing goes true for our Cyber Academy and for the environment that you guys are going to be part of. First thing is, by now, I would imagine that most of you have heard that we're going to be starting school on September 9th. That goes for you folks in the Cyber Academy, but that's also for the students in the brick and mortar that are on campus. We're going to start. Originally, it was scheduled for August 25th. That got moved back a couple weeks. As an administrative staff working with the school board, everyone felt with so many changes and so many differences happening, there was a number of things that Mr. Emmerich outlined last night in his road to reopening that we really felt was important. And so we made that move. So September 9th is when you will open up your Chromebook, get online, and start working with your teachers. So, that's something to mark down on the calendar. Your calendar is going to absolutely mirror that of the students that are in the brick and mortar. So if there's a day that we are off school, then that means that we're going to also, you're going to be off as well with regards to expectations. I want to take a look and see if we have anybody that's requested. I heard it beeping. I don't see anyone there, so I'll go back to our agenda. First thing, we have some great instructors involved. I'm not going to read those to you, but you can take a look and see. We have instructors from each of the curriculum areas that are involved in our Cyber Academy. So you have outstanding Fort LaBeouf instructors involved in each of those areas. We're going to hear from a couple of them in just a little bit. They're just going to talk a little bit about their expectations and kind of the process that they're going through as they prepare to be your Cyber Academy teacher. We also have a program that some of you are already familiar with. We've had students involved in the VLN Cyber Academy through the years. That's really where our Fort LaBeouf Cyber Academy started, was with VLN. So the last several years, when we had students that were requesting a cyber format for a variety of different reasons, we usually hook them up, set them up with VLN. We've partnered with them for years. Mr. Pizzo, I think it's been at least 3 or 4 years. It maybe even has been longer than that. I'd have to talk to the counselors to find out exactly how long, but it's been several years that we've been working with VLN. Great partnership, great program. So some of you are going to be working with VLN teachers, not that many, just a couple classes that we weren't able to offer for a number of different reasons. So you may end up in your schedule seeing that you have a class from VLN. A couple of you might have 2 or 3 classes from VLN and kind of work that direction. All right, so next I'm going to hand over to Mr. Pizzo, talk a little bit about equipment pickup. It went really well today. Mr. Pizzo had that organized and ready to go, so I'm going to turn over to Mr. Pizzo.
Thanks, Mr. Rimpa, and welcome everybody. We had our Cyber Academy pickup today. It went really well, as Mr. Rimpa had stated. Majority of the items were picked up, but there's a few left. So if you're one of the ones that were not able to get here today from 9 to 1 to pick up your packet, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to call the high school, and the phone number is here, 796-2616, to set up an appointment to come in and pick it up. The high school is open every day from 8:30 to 2:30, Monday through Friday, up until school starts, but obviously you're going to need that before the 9th. So make sure you get in and get that picked up sooner rather than later, to give you a chance to go through the things in the packet. If you kept your Chromebook at home, maybe you had some summer work, you don't have the Chromebook, we're not giving you one. You're just going to continue to use that. So if you've had it home over the summer, make sure that you get it charged up and check it out to make sure that it's operational prior to the 9th, because we don't want you going live for class and then all of a sudden find out that it's not working. So get that taken care of early. Also in that packet will be some of the books for some of your classes. Your schedule will be in there. And in addition to the books and the Chromebook, we put a folder in with some forms and some information there. The first thing, like I said, is your schedule. And then secondly will be this salmon-colored Prosoft verification form. Prosoft is what we use it's a data system that we use to keep track of all the students, your contact information, email address, your schedule, grades, things of that nature. So everybody has to fill this out. If you have a change of address, maybe a name change or an email change or a phone number change, please indicate that on this form. And then as you're going through that, if nothing has changed, you still need to verify that it's still correct, because maybe it didn't change for you, but we may have had it wrong. So please just recheck that and verify that. Once that's done, please get it back to the office by Friday, September 11th. That's when everybody's going to have this due. So very important, the Prosoft verification form. The next thing you'll have in your packet will be yellow excuse forms. Those of you that have been here before have seen these. We'll talk about these in a minute when we get to the attendance portion. Third is this brown form, and this is only for current juniors. Once juniors graduate, so between their junior year and their senior year, we are required by law to release the names of all juniors who graduated to all branches of the military. If you desire to not have your name released to the military once you graduate, please fill this form out, return it again by Friday, September 11th, and then we will not release your name. But again, by law, we're required to, unless you tell us not to. So this is just for the juniors. And if you do not desire your name to be released, fill this out, please. And then you also have your updated student handbook. Every year we update it. There's new information. So please go through this. For those of you that are new, incoming 9th graders, familiarize yourself with this. It has all of our rules, our regulations, our expectations, things we offer, weighted classes. So there's a lot of information in here. So just go through it and familiarize yourself with the student handbook. That's it. Mr. Rimpa?
Now, Mr. Pizzo, you had mentioned returning that salmon form for the Prosoft verification. Can they take a picture of that and send that in?
Sure. There's a couple ways that they can do that. They can take a picture of it. There's a few ways you can do that. You can take a picture of it with your phone. You can email it to Mrs. Montgomery here in the main office. You can fax it. 796-2141 is our fax number. If you're listening in, you can jot that down. You can fax that in. You can scan it. You can scan it, and then you can email it to Mrs. Montgomery, or you can just come in and drop it off as well. So there's a variety of ways to get these to us.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzo. And those, the things that Mr. Pizzo just referenced, they're going to be available. When he talks about attendance in just a few minutes, you'll see some of the things. We have it listed on our agenda. I see from looking at our sheet there that many of you have accessed this agenda, and so you have it on your computer, so that's great. Parents, if you wouldn't have access to it, but have your students open up their email and look under this for this document. It would be under our Cyber Academy invite. So they have access to this document. So you can go through this and take a look. There's different things that are available to you. We just talked about the equipment pickup. So there's different things there. The appointment, the high school numbers there. Down below, Mrs. Peters in a few moments is going to talk about, Mrs. Peters is going to talk in just a few minutes about, you know, some tech issues. And there's some links there. So if you go to your student's email and open up this document, they can go to that link, and it makes it a little easier to reach out. Next thing I'd like to talk about just briefly for a few moments is schedules. The schedule has been created for you, and it's specific to you and your situation. Remember, from the very beginning, from the first time you walked in as a freshman, we started talking about our Center for Post-Secondary and Career Discovery. We started talking about you leaving the high school before you even started being part of the high school. So we talked about, you know, thinking about careers, thinking about your strengths, thinking about the things that you have a passion for and a love and desire to be involved in. So really what you want to realize is your schedule is unique to you. Now, that means that in some cases, because we had a limited number of instructors available, you figure for the high school, it takes 54 teachers in order for us to go through the schedule for almost 700 students. So with our 90 students that are involved in the Fort LaBeouf High School Cyber Academy, we currently have, I think, 19 or 20 teachers, instructors involved in that. So in this case, sometimes you may, when you get your schedule, and if you picked up your materials today, you looked at it, you might say, okay, I have 2 period 1s, but I don't have a period 2, or I have, you know, period 1, period 2, period 3, but no period 4. What you have to understand is there were cases where we didn't have as many options available. So what happens is you'll have 2 instructors for period 2. So during that time frame, you have to coordinate, you have to get onto Google Classroom, and Mrs. Peters is going to talk about that in just a few minutes. You're going to want to get onto Google Classroom, communicate with your teacher, and let them know, hey, I not only have you, Mr. Burchanowski, but I also have Mrs. Johnson, both at the same time. So then you'll be able to coordinate times and times that you're available. Our teachers may or may not be available other times of the day. So there's some teachers that they'll say, okay, just maybe come in and meet with me during my prep, and they'll give you a contact. You'll be able to go in and touch base with them. There's other times you're going to work out different schedules where you may meet with and I'm just using Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Birch as an example. You might meet with Mr. Birch 3 times a week, and you might meet with Mrs. Johnson 2 times a week. You might do some different things like that and be creative in order to capitalize on your time. It's going to require some responsibility. It's going to require some professionalism, if you will, on your part as a student. You're going to have to realize how important it is for you to be organized. I strongly encourage you to create a calendar so you know what times you're there. This schedule will very much, your cyber schedule will very much model that of students that are in universities, where maybe during Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they go to one class during a certain time, and then Tuesday, Thursday, they go to another class during that same time. So you have to understand we're continuing to prepare you for college while capitalizing on the instructors and the curriculum that best fits your needs as a student and your future goals, as well as capitalizing on the time. So I strongly encourage you to make sure that you take a look at your schedule, see where there might be some times when you are scheduled for 2 classes during the same period, and you have to work through that. We tried to obviously limit that, so there's not a huge amount of time that is happening, but I just wanted to warn you that's not a mistake. We did that to make sure that we are reaching your academic needs as a student. The next point there, students must be working and or available from 7:35 to 2:12. And again, this goes back to number 1, the major difference between the pandemic cyber and the FLB Cyber Academy. Many students told me and shared with me that they were working during the 4th 9 weeks, that they would work for a little bit, certain days or certain times on their classwork, and that they were working, some students as many as 30, 40 hours a week. That is going to be very much a challenge under the FLB Cyber Academy. The pandemic cyber was obviously something that was put together without any idea that it was coming without any, this is so new to all of us. We're completely on uncharted ground last year to finish the school year. So many things that changed for you as a student, changed for us as adults, changed for your parents while they were working, changed for your teachers, changed for everybody. So you have to understand what we wanted to do is maintain communication with you. We wanted to continue to provide you with an opportunity to learn, but we also wanted to make sure that we realized there were things that you were dealing with, whether it was every member of your family being home or having limited broadband availability. There were all kinds of challenges that you had, so we had to respond to those. We even went towards a pass-fail system, which obviously we're not going to use under the FLB Cyber Academy. So a lot of differences between those two. And the first one is right here. Students must be working and or available from 7:35 to 2:12. That's your school day. That's what the students at Fort LaBeouf that are here on campus in the high school, Mr. Emmerich, Dr. Wolfram referred to it as brick and mortar, meaning inside the building. So if you're in this building, you are available and you're working from 7:35 to 2:12. That exact same expectation is going to be held over you as a student. So don't think that I can work every day at noon and tell your employer, I'm using cyber, so I'll be able to work from noon on, because that is not the case. Because your teachers at certain times are going to say, okay, I want to meet with you every week from this time to this time. We'll say your teacher says, I want to meet with you every Tuesday, Thursday, or even 5 days a week, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 1:30. So your teacher has the right to say to you, we're going to meet every day during that time. Now, here's what happens. Maybe your teacher meets with you 3 days a week. Normally it's a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday situation where you meet every day. But you know what? You're going over a lesson. Things are challenging. The questions are coming out. The teacher recognizes, I need some more time with these kids, just like your teachers do in a normal classroom. And they're going to say, hey, guys, I know that normally we don't meet on Fridays at 1:30. We need to this week. That's designated time for me as a teacher. I need to see you tomorrow at 1:30. You need to be at that session. You need to be in that meeting, just like you need to be in that classroom and not in the halls or not in the cafeteria or not in the restroom or wherever. You need to be in their room during those times. Mr. Pizzo is going to talk a little bit about attendance in a few minutes, and I'm stealing a little bit of his thunder, because if your teacher says we're meeting every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 12:45, then you need to be on your screen meeting, interacting with that teacher. There's going to be cooperative learning activities that you do with other students online, where you're bouncing back and forth and communicating virtually, where you're sharing similar to this, where you have like a Google Doc and maybe you're both working on it, or a Google Slides presentation that you're working on. So understand, you need to be available every day from 7:35 to 2:12. You can't say, well, I had to work. Just like you can't come down to the office and say, sorry, I have to work, I got to leave, and it's 11:30 in the morning. That's an unexcused absence. It's not acceptable. Your education is the most important thing that's going on in your life right now. And that same thing is true for FLB Cyber Academy students. So make sure you understand the expectation. If your teacher says, I need to meet with you all next week because we're preparing for Keystones, or I need to meet with you all next week because I need to get this unit done before we go on Thanksgiving break, or any type of reason, that time that's slated is a time that you're expected to be in class. Now, the one exception might be if you say, well, Mrs. Peters, I actually also have Mrs. Johnson during this same time, and she expects me to meet here, then you share that with the teacher. Those teachers can communicate with one another, and then they'll figure out what's best for you as a student. So then you'll communicate that with your teachers. They'll email, call each other, talk to each other, and they'll figure out when you're going to be with one teacher and when you're going to be with the other. So you're just going to have to communicate. Again, being more responsible, being a little bit more mature, recognizing, hey, I'm in charge of my education. This is important that I get up every morning. This is important that I'm working on my assignments and I'm not falling behind. We talked a little bit already about your weekly student schedules and how they might vary, how they might be a little bit different than what you're used to. And the other thing that you really need to realize is your teachers will be working towards a certain amount of classroom time that's also associated with work time with every day and every period. So even if you don't meet on Wednesdays, even if you meet Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, there still will be work that you need to accomplish, things that you need to submit and hand in. So understand it's unique to the subject area, and most importantly, it's unique to you as a student. We need to make sure that you're prepared when you leave Fort LaBeouf High School. If you think back to Mr. Emmerich's mission statement, it's all about you having a plan when you receive that diploma. So graduation comes, diploma goes in your hand. Every student, 100%, our goal is that 100% of you have a plan for when you leave that very next day. Some of you are going right to the workforce. Some of you are going to college to a 4-year bachelor's degree. Some of you are going into the military. Some of you are working in a family business. Some of you are entrepreneurs working on your own things. It is just any number of things that you might be doing, and it's our job to provide you with the opportunity to be ready. The next session that we're going to have is with Mrs. Peters. She's our technology expert. She's incredibly skilled, and she's already trained and introduced our teachers to many, many different tools. Many of the tools that you ended up using and utilizing back during the 4th 9 weeks of last school year were tools that she taught our other teachers, and she introduced to them. So we brought her in. We're going to have her talk to you a little bit about how you're going to communicate with your instructors and some things that you might expect and some ways to get answers. So Mrs. Peters, welcome.
Thank you.
Steve.
So we're going to be utilizing Google Classroom as our learning platform again. For those of you who were here in the spring, you've used Google Classroom in the past and you're familiar with that platform. For those of you who have never used Google Classroom before, then it's a really intuitive platform, and we'll be providing some information for you as we get closer to the date at the start of the school year as to how to use it. But like I said, it is very intuitive, and I think that you'll find that once you get in there, it's very, very easy to use. Each teacher will be inviting the students to join their subject area for each classroom that they need the students to be in. So for those of you who've been here in the past, typically the teacher will give you an invite code. In this case, you'll just be going to your Google Classroom dashboard, and there'll be tiles there for each of the different subjects, and you'll just have to click the join button in order to join those classes. And again, the teachers will invite you prior to the first day of school. We want to remind you that as you're utilizing Google Classroom, for each assignment or material or question that's posted on there, there's always the option for you to use the private comment option to be able to message your teacher directly in case you have questions about that particular assignment or question that was being posed there. For you parents out there, if you've not done so in the past, then the teachers will give you the opportunity to provide an email address where you can receive either daily or weekly emails that will allow you to see what is due and what's upcoming as far as assignments for your student in all of the Google Classrooms. Okay, so you would just provide your email once, and then it will send you an automated email saying, do you want these emails daily or weekly? And you get to choose that. So it's one way that parents can still be involved and can see what's coming. Of course, we will still utilize Edustar as we have in the past for both parents and students to be able to check progress reports. So for the live sessions that you'll be doing with your class that Mr. Rimpa was just sharing about, we'll be using Google Meet, which is what we're doing right now. So if you were able to successfully get on tonight, you'll be able to get on with your teachers, not a problem. And again, this is the same platform that we used in the spring, and so many of you are already familiar with this. Your teachers will be providing a code for you to join their Google Meet. We will be using nicknamed Google Meets. Unlike tonight we sent a link that you could just click on. The meets in the future with your teachers will be nicknamed meets. And so they'll provide you, typically it's a word. Many of them use their last name as the code that you'll use to join their sessions. Just be aware that the teacher has to actually start the session before you can join it. So if you get the message, if you attempt to join and it says that the session's not available or that you're not allowed to start a session, that just means that the teacher's not quite there yet. So just be patient. As soon as they get in, because again, they'll be wrapping up from one live class in the brick and mortar session and be transferring on to, the cyber session with you. And so there may be instances where the teacher might be a minute or two late, and that's okay. So just know that if you get that error message, just kind of wait for a little bit and try it again. All right, so expectations for the live session are equivalent to the expectations in the regular classroom. You'll need to find a quiet, well-lit place where you can sit for those Google Meet sessions. We say well-lit because at times they will ask you to, to turn your camera on so that you can participate. And you know, if you've got a bunch of bright light, if you're sitting in front of a window with light behind you, they're not going to be able to see you. So, you know, you want to make sure that you're removing distractions like cell phones or things of that sort. So, and your teacher will communicate their expectations for the Google Meets as well for you. We want to remind students to please be checking your email each and every day. Announcements will be emailed to you just as they were when you were here in the brick and mortar school. And so we want you to be checking those announcements as well, because there may be things in there that apply for you even though you're not here physically in the building. Your teachers also will be communicating with you via email as well, in addition to Google Classroom. So we want to make sure that you are checking that on a daily basis. If you happen to experience tech issues with either your Chromebook or with the hotspot, for those of you who requested a hotspot, then we did provide in the agenda for tonight, we provided the link that you can utilize. It takes you to a Google form that can be filled out, and a member of the tech department will get in touch with you so that we can make arrangements in order to help solve that problem. And the last item that we have listed there for this section is that if for some reason you were unable to log into your Google account, if you've not been using yours over the summer, or maybe you can't remember the password or something of that sort, there is a link there that you can utilize in order to request a password reset. So we just really want to make sure that we do everything that we can from the tech side of things to make this experience as seamless as possible. So thank you, Mr. Rimpa.
Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I appreciate all your information. And again, parents, if you are at home and you do not have access to the document that you're looking at us review, your student does have it in their email. If you're not able to find it, students, go ahead and do a search, because it came from me. I sent it the other night to all of you. So you could reference those links. It's sometimes easier to just go onto it and link it right from there. So I would say keep that handy, keep that document somewhere where you can go back and refer to it. So in case you're having a tech issue or if something happens with your password, it'll be an easy way. I can see again that several of you have accessed this document, so I know it's working, and I know that several of you are on it. And if not, you can just type that into your phone or your Chromebook, and you can utilize it that way as well. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about our attendance process. It's again quite a bit different, considerably different than what we had last year. Again, we had pandemic cyber, and now we have the FLB Cyber Academy. Much higher expectations, a much more rigorous curriculum, the kind of curriculum that you'd expect from Fort LaBeouf and that you're used to if you've been going to our school the last few years. And it's much more robust with the amount of work that you're going to get. And it starts with attendance, and it starts with being available every single day. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Pizzo and allow him just a few minutes to talk a little bit about the process for attendance. Mr. Pizzo.
Thanks again, Mr. Rimpa. We'd like to say that the same rules apply as if you were in the building, but actually for the students on the Fort LaBeouf Cyber Academy, they're actually a bit more stringent than they would be if you were here in the brick and mortar. What we want you to know is that you are still a Fort LaBeouf student. Even though you're at home, you're still our student. You still go with our teachers and follow our curriculum. So the same rules apply to you there as they would here. Now, when you're here in the brick and mortar, we don't have a homeroom. You come in and then you go to your first period, and that's where you start your day. But as a Cyber Academy student, you will check into a homeroom. It's going to be one of three teachers who will be your homeroom teacher. It's Miss Bennett, who is a new instructor this year, Mrs. Johnson, or Ms. Schultz, and you'll be assigned to one of those teachers as your homeroom teacher. They will email you a code, an access code, and then every day between 7:35 and 7:45, you will have to check in with the teacher that you're assigned to. Each teacher is going to have a different expectation as to how you do it. It might just be where they see your face and you just wave. It might be sending them something quick, or get on voice or do something. They're going to let you know what they expect. But every day between 7:35 and 7:45, you have to check into your homeroom. If you do not check in to your homeroom during that time, they'll report it to us, and then you'll be considered absent. What does that mean when you're absent when you're on the Fort LaBeouf Cyber Academy? Well, the same rules apply as if you were here. If you're absent, you have to turn in an excuse, and that's where these yellow excuse forms come in. If you're absent, your parent or guardian will fill one out. They can turn it in as we talked before, they can fax it, they can scan it, they can email it, they can drop it off. But when you're absent, you have 3 days from your absence to return this. So if you're absent, you're sick, you just can't log on, you can't do anything, and that's considered an absence on a Monday. You have 3 days, which means we have to receive your excuse by Thursday. If we don't receive the excuse by Thursday, it automatically turns into an illegal absence. What does that mean? An illegal absence means once you accumulate 6 illegal absences, then we have to file truancy charges with District Magistrate McGowan. And then what that means is then you have to go to the courthouse with your parent or guardian. Officer Fox has to go to represent the school. He presents the case because we have all the dates as to why you were absent. Judge McGowan then talks to you and then renders a decision. And there's a variety of things that he can do. But way to avoid that is get your excuse in and log in every day. You are permitted 10 absences per school year that your parent or guardian can write to you. You're allowed 10. Once you get to 10, your 11th must be a medical excuse. And that means that you have to get an excuse from a doctor, a physician, an urgent care, or something. So 10 times your parent or guardian can write you an excuse. And then once you get to 11, then it has to be a medical excuse. Remember that 3-day rule. There is no time limit on that medical excuse. If you're really sick and you just can't log in, again, make sure you get to the doctor and get that back in. If you log in for your homeroom and then you have an appointment with one of your teachers, so you log in, say at 7:40, hi, I'm here, I'm going to be working all day, and then you have an appointment with one of your teachers, Mrs. Johnson, at 1 o'clock. You don't show up to that 1 o'clock meeting with Mrs. Johnson. They'll report it to me, then you're considered to be skipping. Unfortunately, with you not being in the building, we can't issue you an after-school detention for skipping class or Saturday detention for skipping class. So then what in turn that does is that becomes an illegal absence. And that's what I meant by, even for you, it might be a little more stringent being at home than it would be here in the building. So if you're assigned a time and you don't go, then that's considered an illegal absence. And then that will accumulate quickly to 6, and then we'll have to file truancy, which is something we don't like to do. We don't want to do it, but by law, we have to do it. Mr. Rimpa?
Thank you, Mr. Pizzo, and I appreciate that. It's not necessarily the fun things that we want to talk about, but we have to cover it. We want to make sure that you and your parents understand that this is very serious. This is not pandemic education. This is not pandemic cyber, where you could, log on. I called it the golden ticket, to be honest with you. Do a couple of assignments, get to that passing grade, and end up with 100%. That is not the situation. So please don't be confused by that. You can see right here, we did include Mrs. Montgomery's email, just to reiterate what Mr. Pizzo talked about. You'll be sending those to her. And if you don't have email, you can also fax it to us if your parents have a fax at their work or perhaps even in their home. And also keep in mind, folks, you would have to be really, really sick to not be able to at least log on, check in with your teacher. They'll be able to tell if you're not feeling well. They can excuse you and say, you know what, just like they would here in the building, hey, you're not feeling well. Let's catch up tomorrow. You get some rest, but you should at least log on. And if you're to the point where you're too sick, then you still have the 10 days that your parents are able to write excuses for you. So understand that's part of our process. I mentioned this earlier when I talked about high expectations and a rigorous curriculum. And we have 3 guests that are going to join us for just a few minutes each, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Burchanowski, and Mrs. Adams. I'm going to ask Mrs. Johnson if she doesn't mind to please come onto the screen. When I quit talking, she'll start talking. She's one of our outstanding instructors, and she's taken on the cyber role for the social studies department. She's going to talk just a little bit about her process that she's gone through to prepare and a little bit about what you can expect as a student. So Mrs. Johnson, welcome.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Mr. Rimpa said, I am Mrs. Johnson, and I will be the instructor for all of the social studies cyber courses except for safety education. So I will be working with the majority of you. I wanted to take a moment to explain a little bit about the expectations in a social studies cyber course and let you know what you can expect. First of all, I want to assure you that on a daily basis, I will be available via virtual office hours, and I am also always available via email. And I want to really emphasize the importance of communication, especially via school email. Also, I want to let you know that each day you can probably anticipate that the lessons will consist of two components. First of all, the direct instruction that comes from the teacher will be placed on Edpuzzle. And rest assured, prior to the beginning, I will provide instructional videos and any assistance to everybody to make sure that you know how to use these tools. In those videos, that will be the instruction that comes from me regarding the content. There will also be, during that time, questions that check for understanding to make sure that as you're listening, that you are following along and able to grasp that concepts. In addition, on a daily basis, you can anticipate that there will be an assignment or activities that are an extension of that day's content that will ask you to look at a specific person in history or take a look at a specific event and dive a little bit deeper. I will be providing you with weekly summative assessments that will cover basic understanding and that very basic understanding of content, just like who is this and what happened here and how they relate together. And then for the most part, the social studies department is going to be using project-based assessments that will take place over a series of days. And that's where the live sessions will come in, where I will be meeting with you to explain those expectations and answer any questions and help you work through those. Again, I want to welcome you and say thank you for joining us. And I also want to emphasize the importance of communication between yourself and your instructor throughout this experience. Thank you, Mr. Rimpa.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I appreciate that. Next, we're going to have Mr. Burchanowski, who is part of our our staff here that many of you know and many of you have had as an instructor already for you upperclassmen. And Mr. Birch, I'm just going to ask you to come on, talk a little bit about math. I know today Mr. Shessman was sharing with me some exciting things that you're looking into with a cyber pen that somehow works like a mouse and transfers things. So, even now you're investigating tools and strategies and techniques that can help us with this cyber world. So, Mr. Birch, welcome. Any thoughts to share?
Good evening, everybody. As Mr. Rimpa just said, I'm Mr. Burchanowski. I'll be teaching the Algebra 1 and the Algebra 2 sections of our Cyber Academy. Before we get started, I do want to make the note, very important that for the students and the parents and guardians, the class rigor of both of these two sections of our Cyber Academy are going to be just the same as you would see inside the building. We're going to cover the same amount of material that they would do in the building, so definitely be prepared for that. The platform that we're all going to use, as Ms. Peters had talked about, is Google Classroom. Be expecting an invite from me over the next few days here, because I want you to get in there and kind of see the different options that you can have within our class in Google Classroom. What can you expect on a daily basis? For us, we're going to have daily math lessons that are videotaped by me. We're also going to include in these lessons some practice and some checkpoint questions to make sure that you have a great understanding of what we are presenting. Also, along with that, we're going to have weekly assignments. These weekly assignments are going to reinforce these daily lessons that we have covered throughout the week. Our exams in this class are going to be given via Google Forms. Now, I know some of you are worried, being online and the different type of technology tools. I can guarantee you, I can assure you, I'm going to have a video for every single one to walk you through the steps. Mr. Rimpa was talking about these sweet pens that we were looking at. Well, I can make sure that when they come in and you get them, I'm going to walk you through every single step of how to use them and how we can be successful with them. And then finally, some of the questions that I always get, if a student has a question, when is that teacher available? Number one, any student that I have in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, you're able to make an appointment with me and meet one-on-one via Google Meets. Also, if you'd like to, definitely emails can also be a way. If you have a question on a math, maybe take the picture of the question on math, email that to me, and I can get back to you with some of the steps that might help you with any of your misunderstandings. And then finally, any parents or guardians that are on here, I do want you to know, anytime you have a question, a comment, a concern, please feel free to reach out to me with anything that you have that can better help this experience for your child. I thank you very much, and I look forward to having a great semester.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berchanowski. I appreciate that. Again, for you guys, a lot of exciting things. One of the things that's come out of this whole pandemic that we maybe didn't anticipate at first as a teaching staff here at Fort LaBeouf, many of the tools that Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Berchanowski are describing are things that many teachers are starting to employ and put in practice, even though we're here in the building on campus in the brick and mortar setting. So a lot of the things that you guys are working on are things that if times change and it's semester change, if you decide to come back, or next year, if you decide to come back to our brick and mortar, then we're going to have some things that you're going to see that you're going to think like, hey, I was using that. I was working on that when I was in the Cyber Academy, and now I still am. So there's some great tools and some great features that are making us stronger instructors. So I'm really proud of that. Mrs. Adams is representing our science department. She'll be teaching some science courses, and I'm going to have her share a little bit about her perspective and just a little welcome. Mrs. Adams.
Hi, Mr. Rimpa. Hello, everyone. I just want to reiterate again, my name is Mrs. Adams, and I'm going to be teaching some of the science courses. One will be Environmental Science 2 for you upperclassmen. And then the other one, I will be taking care of the biology and any honors biology students that are with them. Mrs. Ransom is also teaching some science courses, and also Mr. Falk. Mr. K. Falk will be teaching some chemistry courses. Just like Mr. Berchanowski and Ms. Johnson said, the rigor will be the same as if you were in class. I am going to be teaching the same exact thing to my biology students that I would be doing if you were sitting in front of me. You guys are going to be able to do labs. Okay, that's one thing that will be a little bit different when we go through this. Mrs. Ransom and I have spent a lot of time talking about how to get these labs done. And what we've decided to do is many of them, we will actually record ourselves doing them. And then what you guys will do is take notes on what is happening, and then you guys will probably have to write a lab report or explain to us what you saw happening in that lab. We will also, I will be giving you recorded instructions of how to do a lab if you're going to do it at home. We'll also give you a recorded set of notes and set of examples of what we might be talking about in either biology or in environmental science. And weekly, we will also watch videos. Videos are great, the ones that we have out there that have to do with explaining cell processes. Some of that can be a little confusing. So if you can see the video and you can actually see an animation of something happen, that will work. And that will make it easier for you to understand it. The biggest thing I think we need to make sure that happens is communication. Whether it is a parent or whether it is you, the student, make sure that if you don't understand something, you let us know. We don't know if you don't understand it, if you don't reach out to us. So an email, either join us in our Google Meets, ask questions that way, but always, always reach out if you have any questions. I think that's all I had, Mr. Rimpa.
Well, thank you, Ms. Adams. I want to emphasize what Mrs. Adams just said. Folks, when you're in the classroom and you're sitting, our teachers are trained and they've been doing this for years. They're experienced, they're talented. They're able to tell by facial expressions, body posture, just different things that's going on. And they get a vibe for, I don't think that Steve's understanding this right now, or I don't think Heather is recognizing what's going on, and they can follow up. Sometimes they'll do some formative assessment pieces where they might have you do the whiteboards and you answer the questions, or they might have you do something with the old eggs where you did the timers and the questions. But what happens is they're not going to have that luxury of looking at you that often, and certainly not for the 80 plus minutes a day. So you're really going to have to take, again, I keep talking about being responsible, being mature, and understanding that your education, you're taking ownership of that in a little bit more manner than you would if you were here on campus. So make sure that you're communicating. I love what Mrs. Adams said, communicate with your teacher. And if you start struggling, reach out to them and reach out to them consistently so that they know what's going on. And that way they'll be able to get a better feel for where your learning is and where your struggles and where your strengths are. And then they can work the lessons around those as well. So thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Berchanowski. Thank you, Mrs. Adams, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking some time to just reach out to our kids and share a few things. Grading scale, again, it's not a pass-fail system. This is the Fort LaBeouf grading scale. Everything applies. You're still, like Mr. Pizzo said, you're a Fort LaBeouf student. So this is not different. You're not in a different, it's kind of like when our students are at the Erie County Tech School. In fact, we have some students that are at the Erie County Tech School and involved in our Cyber Academy. So, we have students in those. When you're at the Erie County Tech School, you're still a Fort LaBeouf Bison. First and foremost, you're still a Fort LaBeouf student. And it's the same thing for this academy. You are a Fort LaBeouf student with the same expectations and the same features that anyone else has. Take a look at that grading scale. It should look familiar because we've been using it for years. Now I would encourage you, we only have a couple things left in our agenda. I would encourage you, if there's anything that we missed, anything that we need to emphasize, and Ms. Peters, I'm going to ask you to join me over here. Put those questions into the chat box. And here's the other thing. If you don't think of it now and you think of it later and think, doggone it, I should have asked that, or I wish I would have thought to ask this, email your teachers. You should have your, for those of you, and most of you picked up your schedule today, most of you picked up your materials, your Chromebook and your textbooks and those forms that Mr. Pizzo spoke of. So email your teachers, start reaching out to them. And that way you can get a feel for where you're at. Parents, I see that we have a lot of parents on. We have over 50 guests, and as we glanced at the windows, we saw that there were several that were 2 and 3 people in the window. So we know we have over 50 guests that have joined us this evening. So thank you so much for coming out. Parents are involved. Right here's some things for you to think about. First of all, planning for virtual learning. I would encourage both students and teachers to click this link. There's some very good points there for you to prepare for virtual learning. Mrs. Peters, you referenced that already. A lit room, a comfortable room, a quiet room, away from, if there's small children or animals, or if your parents work from home, whatever the situation is, brothers and sisters, find a place for you so that you can focus. And you're going to see some of those in that virtual learning room. It's from the CDC, and there's some strong points that are involved in there. And then parents, this is specifically for you, talking to your student about COVID and how it's impacting their lives. Listen to their concerns, be open, understand that just like you and me and all of us that are going through a lot with this change, kids are going through a lot, and they might be a little bit more worried or anxious than they let on. So make sure you're listening and looking for those things. Look for signs of stress. That's something that's very important. Kids are amazingly resilient, and sometimes they're not the best communicators. Some are better communicators than us, certainly, but many times teenagers think that they have to take everything on for themselves. Make sure that you allow them to have that weak moment and confide in you. Share what you know. Talk to them about what you've seen from the Road to Recovery or Road to Reopening Schools from Mr. Emmerich. Talk about what you've seen on our Bison broadcast. Talk about things that we've viewed tonight with the expertise of Mrs. Peters and Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Burchanowski and Mrs. Adams. So, reference those things. It says here plan play dates, and I know that play date word is probably, you're thinking that's not really appropriate for my high school student, and I understand that. But when you read the recommendation here, it talks about, some of you have been, since March, very limited in your social engagements. Some of you, since this whole thing hit our country, have changed how you live. And so going and changing and all of a sudden interacting with people and getting back to some of what you were used to before is a little bit of a struggle. So try to, follow the advice that's included in this paragraph, and that may help you. And then again, lastly, prepare them for change. Understand that change is inevitable in our world. Look at us right now. Who would have ever thought? I have multiple masks at my desk here that I utilize when I'm out of my office. I have disinfectant wipes that we utilize all the time. I have hand sanitizer. The things that are so important. Wearing the mask, covering your face, soap and water, washing your hands, and again, just physically distancing. We call it physically distancing at Fort LaBeouf rather than social distancing. So I tried to put some time in there to allow you some time. Mrs. Peters, any questions? Did any questions come up during our talk there in the chat room?
Looks like we have two questions so far. One is, what if the internet is not working at our house during the school day?
Yeah, and that's going to happen. And the first thing that I'm going to do is remind you there are excused absences under the whole PDE that Mr. Pizzo is able to accept. And if a student is on his way to school and it gets a flat tire, well, that's awful and that stinks. And you can demonstrate to us. We can walk out and see the donut on your car. We can see the blown tire in the back of the car or the truck. And we can believe you 100% that you got a flat tire on the way to school. However, that's still not an excused absence under PDE's rules and regulations. Maybe you got snowed in. Maybe your driveway, you got stuck in a snowbank. Again, we will believe you. It's not that anybody at Fort LaBeouf is saying that you're not being honest or disingenuous. However, those are not excused absences. So very much that's going to happen. So if your internet goes down, then you need to make sure you're reaching out. Most of you have phones, so you should be able to reach out on your phone. So even if your internet is down, like your Wi-Fi in your home, you should be able to reach out and still do your login for your attendance, reaching out to one of your homeroom teachers, and then reaching out and explaining, hey, the internet died. I don't know why. It's happened at my home, where all of a sudden it's not working. So I get it. We believe you. We know that's an issue. However, make sure that you communicate, because you can still get credit for the day and it won't be an unexcused or illegal absence. So, if you don't show up at all and you don't make any effort to communicate, you can call the school. The number's on there, 796-2616, and you can let them know, hey, can you connect me to Mr. Pizzo? I need to let him know the internet went down. And then it's an excused absence for the day and you're fine. But if you don't do anything and you're gone for 1 or 2 or 3 days and say, oh, my internet stopped, that's not going to work. That's not enough. That's not being responsible. That's not being mature. Just like we have teachers that are going to be cyber teaching. Some might be from home for certain times of the day. If their internet goes down, they can't just call me and say, oh, I didn't teach today because my internet went down. No, they have to take steps and change. I know students that are going to college right now. They have things that are due at a certain time. It's due Thursday night at midnight. And guess what? If the internet goes down, I know students that are in college, they get up, they drive to a hotspot, whether it's in the town of Waterford or in Mill Creek. They go to a spot where they know there's a hotspot. I know Mrs. Peters last year, there were times you and I, when we weren't allowed in the building, we would drive to the parking lot. We'd sit outside the building in our vehicle on our phone or on our computer, and we would grab the network and utilize it. So what I'm telling you is being mature, being somewhat almost professional, understanding you have to take ownership of your learning means that if that goes down, you need to communicate that immediately so that we know that it's true and it's real. You can't 3 days later say, oh, my internet went down. Those days will end up being unexcused if you're 18 and older, and unexcused, illegal if you're 17 or younger. And unfortunately, they'll count against you. So, those things happen. I appreciate the question. It's a great question, and I hope I answered that thoroughly. Mr. Pizzo, anything to add on that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Mr. Rimpa.
Okay. Ms. Peters, what else do we have?
Actually, the only other question was about password resets. So what I did is I put the link for the password resets right into the chat. So that's the last.
So they have it.
That we have.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so appreciative of you taking time to come out and join us and be part of this session. It's we have one coming up right now. Go ahead, Mrs. Peters. What's the question?
Okay, it says, I believe you had said if you aren't online during the 7:35 to 2:12 time period, that you'll have consequences and that it'll be considered an illegal absence. I'm going to be honest, I work at Waldemere, and I was wondering what I would have to do once school officially starts, because typically my work hours range from 10 until 7. Would I have to rearrange my schedule to suit my school schedule? Because that's the case, I'm going to have to get in contact with my supervisor.
Yeah, and that's what we spoke of. Great question. There was a lot more flexibility with the pandemic because the expectations were so much lower than what we're used to in the classroom. So what happened was, if you were planning on working between the hour or before 2:12, you can't. You're going to need to be expected to be available to your teachers. So if they decide, hey, I need to talk to you guys at 1:45 and we're going to review this again and prepare for tomorrow's exam, you're going to need to be available during that time. I see we have a couple more questions. Go ahead, Mrs. Peters.
So why do the schedules only have first semester classes?
Great question. I appreciate that. Right now, we are only planning for first semester. It was very difficult to plan even just this because we're literally planning a school inside another school. It's been very challenging, honestly. The logistics of it have been very difficult. In fact, quite frankly, a little bit more difficult than I expected when I first started putting it together. Again, making sure that you have classes that are relevant to you and that are most appropriate for you as a learner. Those were really important to us. And so, we had to go through that process of scheduling that way. So the reason there's only first semester is I will start this whole process over again with the counselors again in November. Now, by then things could change. As you guys know, things are changing every day, sometimes by the hour. No kidding, literally by the hour. Sometimes things are changing. And here's what's been happening. We are set up that we want to make sure you have a positive experience, and then we're going to reevaluate everything. Some of you may end up coming back to brick and mortar second semester, and that'll be fine. Some of you will stay with the Fort Love Cyber Academy, and that will be fine. Some of the students in brick and mortar may go to the Cyber Academy at semester. There's going to be some changes. So it's really virtually impossible for us to create second semester schedules now because we don't know who's going to be where. And there's no way that we can speculate that, okay? So that's kind of why we just want to get through first semester. And then in November, December, I'll start creating another schedule for you for second semester. And again, some things may change with who's teaching cyber and who's not in the building, some different things like that. So great question. Thank you. Next one.
So who should they contact if there's a delay with logging in first thing in the morning, like a unique case of just today?
Oh yeah, like you're going to get into the habit of interacting with whoever your homeroom teacher is, getting on there, waving. They're going to say, I see Anne-Marie Getz is in my screen right now. So the teacher gets on and she says, Mrs. Johnson says, hi, I don't even know if Mrs. Johnson's your homeroom teacher, but you get my point. She'll say, hi, Anne-Marie. And then you can click off, you've logged in and you can move on and get ready for first period. And Mrs. Johnson will go through everybody and then be done. Mrs. Schultz, same process. She'll go through everybody and bing, 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 bing. She'll move on and be done. Miss Bennett, same thing. She'll go through, she'll say your name, you can wave. You don't even have to interact, but you're gonna want to have a connection with that teacher and be able to email them by your phone because the great majority of you have phones. We know that, and you should be able to email your teacher and say, Mrs. Johnson, something happened to my Wi-Fi at home. It's not working, but I'm here, and then she'll be able to see that you're not skipping class. You're not doing something you're not supposed to. You're not sleeping in. You're not that. And again, we talked about you being sick. If you get on and you're all beat up and you're not feeling well, your instructor is going to be able to see that, and they're going to be able to work with you. So understand that as you go through this, that you're going to form a bit of a relationship with each of your instructors. You're going to form a bit of a relationship with your homeroom teacher, and you'll be able to communicate with them. Let's say that you try to email and even your phone isn't working. The Wi-Fi or whatever it's called on your phone isn't working. Now you'll just call the school and let Mrs. Montgomery know. That's that 796-2616 number. Let her know, hey, there's something wrong. I want to make sure that the school knows I'm not blowing off class. I'm not sleeping in. I'm up. I just can't get my internet to work yet. We have the Verizon people coming this afternoon. Whatever the situation, you'll communicate that, and then we can work through it together. Next question.
Okay. For students who have IEPs, will the cyber program follow the IEP?
Yeah, great question. Again, students with learning support needs and also, there's gifted needs. There's students on Chapter 15. There's all kinds of situations. All those will absolutely be considered. And in fact, we have teachers that are focused on each of those areas. So I'm glad you brought this up. First of all, Mrs. Johnson works with students with Chapter 15s here in the building in the brick and mortar, and she's done some things already over the last couple of years. So many of you know her name. She will be working with those students and communicating with them as well as your teacher. So you'll have your classroom teacher that you're working with, and then you'll have, if you have a Chapter 15, Mrs. Johnson will be also following up and working with you. If you're a student with an IEP, Ms. Schultz is going to be dedicated. She'll be an REI for cyber. So in other words, if you have a class and you're struggling, she could come into that class and she could work with you right along, just like she would, except instead of being in the classroom where Mrs. Schultz might sit down beside you, now Ms. Schultz is going to be available and coming in through a virtual format. And what was the other one? Oh, Ms. Hinman will be reaching out to students with the gifted IEP as well. So absolutely, I appreciate the question, and I hope that answered that.
We had to thank you for answering the question about the work situation.
Okay.
And then if the student changes their mind and they want to come back to the physical school building, when can they come back?
The best case for your academic programming is that semester. What happens is, the building, we're in a whole different situation than we've ever been. In the past, maybe some of you have experienced this. If we have a strong teacher, we may end up with 32, 33 students in that classroom. Remember, with the COVID regulations for what we have here with the physical distancing and the process that we're in, the classrooms look completely different than what they had in the past. You might recall Mrs. Lowry always had her desk set up in pods. Mr. Lundell had small tables in his room. Mr. Maynard had long tables in his room. All those tables have been removed. In fact, most of them, Mr. Pizzo and Mrs. Howe have put into the cafeteria as they're working to maximize the space in the cafeteria. So right now we have caps on classroom sizes, and we're doing everything we can to minimize those so that students that are in the brick and mortar can utilize time without masks. And that's kind of limited. We have so many students and our classrooms are not that big. I never realized that we had smaller classrooms relative to other high schools until this has occurred. And when we did the square footage and things, there's certain limitations that we have. So in order to meet those expectations and recommendations from CDC, Department of Health, Department of Education, and create the most safe atmosphere possible, it's going to be difficult for students to bounce back and forth. But the first thing I spoke of was your academic programming. Understand how important it is for you to get into a phase, into a system, into a schedule, into a process of now's when I do homework, now's when I do my first period, now's when I work on algebra, now's when I'm coming back and forth. So it becomes really, really important to make sure, guys, that you get into a routine. And so we don't want students bouncing back and forth. So semester would be the best option, to work through this semester with your classes, get used to your teachers, give it a chance. Understand that your parents and you have worked through this and you feel it's the safest, most appropriate process for you to complete your schooling. And then what happens is you can change and come back, let us know in November, early December, because I told you I'll be working on schedules then for second semester. So that's the best time. The only other time we might consider at a 9 weeks if there was something extreme. Remember, if you are having struggles with your Wi-Fi at home, remember there is a hotspot availability. There's a survey coming out. You may have heard Dr. Wolfram reference that the other day on his Road to Reopening speech with Mr. Emmerich. And so look for that survey. And if you're in need of a hotspot, let us know if your Wi-Fi is not reliable. Mrs. Peters?
Okay, so do students get a lunch break during the school day like they would at school, and is that listed on the schedule?
It's not, but yes, you do. Yeah, every student would still get their 30 minutes of lunch as designed by the Department of Education.
So the next is about Google Meet. I'm going to go ahead and answer this one if that's okay, Mr.
Yep.
Rimpa. So, that's okay. They don't need to see me. Is Google Meet already provided on the Chromebooks, or does it need to be downloaded? So Google Meet is the tool that we're using tonight, and basically the students just need to go to meet.google.com. The teachers will have that link available in Google Classroom for the students to just simply click on. There's no app that needs to be installed in order for that to be functional. So, and then there was a question next about when the hotspots will be set up. Those were handed out today, I believe.
No.
They were not. I'm sorry.
No, they were not handed out. If you need a hotspot, you need to email Mr. Cortez.
Yeah, I would go to, guys, I would go back to the link that we shared earlier. Is that right,
I'll put
Mrs.?
that right in the chat.
Yeah, Mrs. Peters will just put that right in the chat for you folks. So if you're in need of a hotspot, the link is there. If you're still in need, then email Mr. Cortez. And remember how the emails work. It's last name, first initial at flbapps.net. So it would be Mr. Cortez's last name, CORTESM at flbapps.net. So, but the link is the best way.
Yes.
The link is much more efficient for you to get your hotspot. And with the 2 weeks pushed back, gives you a little additional time to get that picked up.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, do we know what sports will be put into play this school this year?
Is this athletics question?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm hoping and praying that all of our athletics are in place. I know that all of our teams that do off-season workouts have been working and putting in great amounts of effort with tremendous success. Mr. Barton, Mr. Pizzo, myself, many of your head coaches work together on our athletic plan. Currently, Mr. Pizzo, we have basketball working. We have soccer working, football. We have volleyball. We have cross country. I repeat those when we have boys and girls teams. Golf is working. All those teams are currently out there preparing for the season and getting ready to compete. And that's been a hot button item. I would encourage you to follow along the PIAA website, follow along. If you do the tweeting thing, Tom Reisenweber does a pretty good job of keeping things current and up to date. I know that the president of District 10, Dr. Bob Lombardi, put together a very strong argument and presented it to our Governor Wolf today. That was made public, so you can go out and look at that. So we're hoping that our students get a chance to participate. Our band has been here working very, very hard. Our color guard has been here. There's times, you know, when Mr. Pizzo and I have the cameras up and we see the kids that are in the halls, they're following all the protocol, they're staying physically distanced, they're wearing the masks, they're involved. It's been awesome to see. It's actually just filled our hearts with joy to see so many of our athletes here working. We had almost 200 kids show up for our school physicals. Was that last week, Mr. Pizzo?
Yes.
Just last week, we had almost 200 students show up for school physicals. So we're ready to go. Our coaches have done an incredible job of following the rules and making sure that they're providing a safe opportunity for our athletes. So yeah, I'm excited. As you can tell, we're hoping that's going to happen. And right now, we're just waiting for PIAA and our governor's office to release that. It was pushed back 2 weeks from the original start date. So unfortunately, everybody's going to get a hoof print, but the dates are out of whack. I looked at it; it was printed already. They're here. They're getting. Mrs. Masella will be mailing that out with her crew very soon. And when you look at the dates for all the athletics, everything got pushed back 2 weeks. So the dates are incorrect. I apologize for that. But again, those were printed. Those were already in the shop. They're here, delivered, ready to get sent out to you folks. So not much we can do. Next, Mrs. P. Oh, one more thing. You know, Mr. Pizzo and I keep in contact with Mr. Barton pretty closely on the whole process. We have had over 3,000 students screened since we began in July with the touchless temperature screenings. Many of you that are even involved here tonight in our program are also involved in some of the like some of you are involved with color guard, some of you are involved with some of the sports teams. So again, you know, remember, you're a Fort LaBeouf student. You're not anything different than a Fort LaBeouf student. It's just your venue is a little different. Ms. Peters?
Schedule changes. Who should they contact?
Your counselor, just like normal, email your counselor. If you're in 9th and 10th grade, your counselor is Mrs. Lutzo. And if you're in 11th or 12th grade, your counselor is Mrs. Uvigis. And if you are a VOTEC student at the Erie County Tech School, your counselor is Mrs. Gadley. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so thank you guys so much. Continue to reach out to your teachers. Continue to reach out to your friends that are involved in this community. Support each other, and you know, rely on each other. You're going to do some group work. You're going to do some cooperative learning work in your classes. So you're going to have a community amongst yourselves through this cyber network. And we're excited to see how it goes. We'll be reaching out to you towards the end of the Mrs. Peters. Thank you. She provided the emails. She provided the emails addresses for the counselors there. So if you need to reach out to your counselors, if you're concerned about your schedule or have questions about college, questions about the application process, questions about what's next for you, go ahead.
So just if we have any other questions with that weren't addressed tonight, that they can go ahead and email to ask questions here at the school.
Yeah. Reach out to your counselors, reach out to Mr. Pizzo, reach out to myself. And I appreciate everyone's attention. Everyone was fantastic. Good luck to you. I'm looking forward to see how this program works. And you guys have a great evening. Thank you.